When my dad died, I had one chance to honor his life and expose the woman who made it a living hell. I wrote his obituary and erased my mom from it, like she'd never existed. What happened next? Her carefully crafted lies unraveled, and the truth finally saw the light. I stood in the dim light of the funeral home, the air heavy with the scent of lilies and polished wood, clutching a pen and a blank sheet of paper. It was December 3rd, 2022, 2 days after my dad, Robert, took his last breath. My hands trembled, not from nerves, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I was 30, a grown woman with a life of my own. But in that moment, I felt like a little girl again, desperate to protect the man who'd been my everything. This wasn't just an obituary. It was my chance to tell the world who my dad really was, and to make sure the woman who'd broken him didn't get to steal his legacy. My name's Sarah, and this is the story of how I honored my dad's memory and exposed my mom, Linda, for the abuser she was. To understand why I did it, you need to know where it all started. Dad was the heart of our family, a mechanic with hands always stained with grease, and a laugh that could light up a room. He grew up in a small Ohio town, the kind where everyone knows your name, and the diner serves the same cherry pie recipe from 1955. He wasn't rich, but he was proud. He worked double shifts at the auto shop to buy our house, a modest two-story with a sagging porch and a backyard big enough for a swing set. That house was his dream, proof he could give his family a good life despite coming from nothing. I was his only kid, born when he was 34 and mom was 30. Dad was the kind of father who'd spend hours teaching me how to ride a bike, even after a 12-hour shift. He'd come home, kick off his boots, and toss a football with me until the fireflies came out. On weekends, we'd watch old westerns. John Wayne was his hero, and he'd narrate the plots like he was part of the story. "That's how you stand up to the bad guys, Sarah," he'd say, pointing at the screen. "You don't back down." Those moments were my safe haven, a shield against the storm that was my mom. Mom, Linda, was a different beast. To the outside world, she was perfect. She'd smile at church, her hair perfectly curled, handing out cookies at the PTA like she was auditioning for Mother of the Year. Neighbors loved her. "Linda's such a saint," they'd say, taking care of Robert with all his health problems. But behind our faded yellow curtains, she was a hurricane. She'd scream at Dad for the smallest things: burnt toast, a late bill, the way he coughed. I was 8 when I heard her call him useless for the first time, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I deserve better than this, Robert," she'd hiss. "I should have married someone who isn't falling apart." I'd hide in my room, clutching my stuffed bear, wondering why she hated him so much. It wasn't just Dad she targeted. I was her punching bag, too. If I spilled juice, she'd call me clumsy and make me clean it with a rag while she watched. If I got a B on a test, she'd say I was wasting her time with my stupidity. By the time I was 10, I knew what to expect. Her love was conditional, and I was always falling short. But Dad, he never made me feel like that. He'd sneak me ice cream after her tirades, whispering, "You're my best thing, Sarah. Don't let her tell you different." As I got older, I saw Mom's game more clearly. She wasn't just mean, she was a narcissist, obsessed with control and attention. She'd spend hours on the phone with her friends, spinning tales about how hard her life was, how she was trapped with a sick husband and a difficult daughter. Meanwhile, Dad's health was crumbling. By his 50s, he had heart problems, arthritis, and a limp that made walking a chore. Mom used his illness like a weapon, playing the martyr while neglecting him. She'd leave him alone for days, claiming she needed space, while she flirted with men online, telling them she was separated or divorced. She wasn't. She just wanted the sympathy and the freedom to do whatever she wanted. I moved out at 18, desperate to escape her. College was my lifeline, and therapy became my anchor. I spent years unpacking the damage she'd done, learning terms like narcissistic abuse and gaslighting. But I never stopped worrying about Dad. I'd call him every week, drive 2 hours to visit, and beg him to leave her. "Come live with me, Dad," I'd say. "I've got a spare room. We'll watch westerns every night." He'd just smile, his eyes tired, and say, "This is my home, Sarah. I worked too hard for it. I'm not letting her take it." That house was his pride, his proof he'd made something of himself. Leaving meant admitting defeat, and Dad wasn't built that way. Let me take you back to a moment that still haunts me. I was 12, hiding in my closet, my knees pulled to my chest. Downstairs, Mom was screaming at Dad. It was Christmas Eve, and he'd forgotten to buy batteries for the toy train set he'd gotten me. "You can't even do one thing right, Robert," she yelled. I heard a crash, a plate hitting the wall. "I should have left you years ago. You're dragging me down with you." Dad's voice was quiet, almost broken. "I'm sorry, Linda. I'll fix it." He didn't need to fix anything. He'd spent weeks saving for that train set, knowing how much I loved model trains. But Mom didn't care. She never did. That night, I made a promise to myself. One day I'd protect Dad the way he always protected me. He'd stand between me and her rages, taking the brunt of her venom so I wouldn't have to. When I was 15, she slapped me for talking back, and Dad stepped in, his voice firm for once. "Don't you touch her, Linda," he said, his eyes blazing. She backed off, but the look she gave him was pure poison. I knew then that she'd never change, and I swore I'd find a way to make her pay for what she'd done to us. By the time Dad was in his early 60s, his health was a shadow of what it used to be. His heart condition meant he needed regular doctor visits, and his arthritis made simple tasks like opening a jar agony. He relied on Mom more than ever, and she took full advantage. She'd drain his disability checks, claiming they were for household expenses. But I'd find him eating canned soup for days because she hadn't bothered to buy groceries. She'd leave him alone for hours, sometimes days, while she went shopping or met friends for coffee. She'd come home with new clothes or jewelry while Dad's meds sat unfilled at the pharmacy because we can't afford it. I'd drive up every weekend bringing groceries and cleaning the house. I'd find Dad in his recliner, looking thinner each time, his eyes dull. "She's doing her best, Sarah," he'd say, but I knew better. She was neglecting him, exploiting him, and breaking his spirit. She'd tell anyone who'd listen that she was a saint for taking care of him, but it was a lie. She was living off his money, using his illness to fuel her victim complex. She'd even started telling people they were divorced, flirting with men online, talking about moving to Florida with some guy she'd never met. Dad heard it all, and it crushed him, but he wouldn't leave. "This is my home," he'd say, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't let her win." I tried everything to get him out. I talked to lawyers, social workers, even the police, but they all said the same thing. Without physical abuse or hard proof, it was a civil matter. I got Dad to make me his durable power of attorney and added my name to his bank accounts to keep Mom from draining them completely. But it wasn't enough. She'd still find ways to siphon money. 200 here, 500 there, always with some excuse. The car needed repairs, she'd say, but the car looked fine, and Dad's wheelchair was falling apart. I'd sit with him, watching Westerns, trying to bring back the man who used to laugh at John Wayne's one-liners. "You're my best thing, Sarah," he'd say, squeezing my hand. But every time I left, Mom's car would pull into the driveway, and my heart would sink. I'd hear her voice through the walls, sharp and accusing. "Why's Sarah always here, Robert? She's trying to control you." Control? That was her game, not mine. She'd gaslight him, make him doubt me, doubt himself. It was a slow poison, and I was powerless to stop it. The breaking point came in November 2022. Dad was hospitalized again, his heart failing faster than the doctors could manage. They told me he had weeks, maybe days, left. I couldn't let him die in that house, under her thumb. I brought him home on hospice the day after Thanksgiving, setting him up in my spare bedroom. I made it as comfortable as I could. Fresh sheets, his favorite quilt, a small TV for his Westerns. I cooked his favorite meals, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, and played Johnny Cash on my old record player. Rusty, my golden retriever, would curl up beside him, and for the first time in years, Dad looked at peace. He'd smile, his eyes crinkling, and say, "This is nice, Sarah, real nice." Mom didn't visit once. Not a call, not a text. She was too busy playing the grieving wife to her friends, soaking up their sympathy. "Oh, poor Linda," they'd say. "It's so hard for her." I wanted to scream. "Hard for her? She hadn't lifted a finger for him in years, but I kept my focus on Dad. I read to him, told him stories about my job as a graphic designer, and held his hand when he was too weak to talk. Those days were a gift, a chance to give him the love he deserved, but they were also a reminder of everything Mom had taken from him. I was 16 when I first tried to stand up to Mom. She'd spent Dad's entire paycheck on a new couch, leaving him without money for his heart meds. I confronted her, my voice shaking. "How could you do this to him?" I asked. She laughed, cold and sharp. "You think you know better than me, Sarah? He's lucky I'm still here." Dad overheard and pulled me aside later. "Don't fight her," he said, his voice heavy. "It's not worth it." But it was worth it to me. I promised myself that day. When the time came, I'd make sure the world knew the truth about her. Dad passed on December 1st, 2022 at 3:17 a.m. I was holding his hand, Rusty asleep at his feet. His last words were, "You're my best thing, Sarah." I sobbed until my chest ached, but inside a fire was burning. I wasn't just going to bury my dad. I was going to make sure his story was told right. The funeral home meeting was a blur. They needed Mom's consent for cremation since she was still legally his spouse. I called her, bracing for a fight. "No," she said, her voice dripping with spite. "I'm not signing anything." I could hear her smugness, like she was enjoying her last bit of power over him. I swallowed my rage and offered her the Social Security survivor benefits, money she'd get anyway. "Fine," she snapped, like she'd won something. "But don't think this makes you the boss." I hung up, my hands shaking. That's when I knew what I had to do. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, and started writing Dad's obituary. I poured everything into it. His love for fixing cars, his goofy laugh, the way he'd cheer at my soccer games even when I missed every shot. I wrote about his parents, his brother Jim, me, even Rusty, who'd been his buddy in those final days. But Mom, I didn't mention her. Not a single word about a wife, a marriage, or a partner. It wasn't spite, it was justice. She didn't deserve to be remembered as his widow, not after years of neglect and abuse. She wasn't grieving. She was already planning her next sob story. I submitted the obituary to the local paper, and it went live 2 days later. The fallout hit like a tidal wave. Mom called me at 7 a.m., her voice shrill. "How dare you leave me out?" she screamed. "I was his wife for 40 years. You're a selfish, ungrateful brat." I stayed calm, my voice ice cold. "You stopped being his wife a long time ago, Linda. You don't get to play the widow now." She hung up, but the calls kept coming. Aunt Karen, Dad's cousin Mike, her church friends, everyone wanted to know why she wasn't in the obituary. "Wasn't Linda married to Robert?" they'd ask. Mom tried to spin it, telling people I was unstable, that I'd stolen her chance to grieve. But I was done letting her lie. When people asked, I told the truth. I sat with Aunt Karen over coffee and told her about the years of neglect, how Mom left Dad to fend for himself while she spent his money. I told cousin Mike about the online affairs, the way she'd call Dad useless to his face. I told her church friend Susan about the times I'd find Dad eating stale bread because Mom forgot to shop. I didn't yell or cry. I just laid out the facts, let them sink in. And they did. People started pulling away from Mom. Her friends stopped calling. Her church group went silent. The victim complex she'd spent decades building, it was gone. She wasn't the saintly wife anymore. She was the woman who'd betrayed a dying man. The best moment came at Dad's memorial service. It was a small gathering, just family and a few of his old coworkers from the shop. Mom showed up, dressed in black, playing the grieving widow. She tried to take center stage, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, but people avoided her. Susan, her church friend, pulled me aside. "I had no idea what she put you through," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Mom noticed, her face tightening. She cornered me later, her voice low. "You think you've won, Sarah? You've ruined my life." I looked her in the eye. "You ruined your own life, Mom. I just told the truth." She walked away, and I knew she'd never forgive me. But I didn't need her forgiveness. It's been 2 years since Dad's death, and I don't regret a thing. Mom's still out there, living off those survivor benefits in a small apartment she rented after selling the house. But her reputation is in pieces. Neighbors cross the street when they see her. Her church group doesn't invite her to potlucks anymore. She's alone with her lies, and that's the punishment she earned. I'm not proud of hurting her. I'm proud of honoring Dad. His obituary told the story of a man who loved fiercely, who deserved better than he got. By leaving her out, I gave him the peace he never had in life. This wasn't about being cruel or petty. It was about truth. In therapy, I learned that narcissists thrive on silence, on people protecting their secrets. If Mom didn't want her story told, she shouldn't have written it with years of abuse. I'm not the villain here, no matter what she says. I did what I had to do for Dad, for me, for the little girl who hid in the closet and swore she'd make things right. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. If you're out there dealing with someone who's hurt you or someone you love, know this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or violent. It's quiet, deliberate, and true. So hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. This is my story of how I gave my dad the justice he deserved, one word at a time.